Welcome into another edition of Road to the Blue Map, presented by Little Pink Houses. Little Pink Houses started with the concept that takes a woman's touch to make a house a home. Our licensed builder and main designers are women. We not only build a great home, but we act as the designer, assist in fixture choices and finishes through the build-out or renovation. Basically a one-stop shop for luxury renovations and new homes construction. Let us help you make the hard decisions that normally you pay an interior designer and architect to do over the cost of the builder. Check out Little Pink Houses, and we appreciate their sponsorship with us here with Average Joe's Sports Talk and Road to the Blue Map. Week 5 is the 6th week of the season now, Bo, and it's crazy. I was listening to some other guys talk about just how fast you wait all year. I mean, we wait for this all year. And, I'm a baseball guy. I coach baseball. I love baseball, but you wait for this season all year, and the next thing you know, it gets here, and all of a sudden it's done. Now we're 5 weeks into the year, 6 weeks into the year, and really starting to see which teams are starting to separate themselves from the pack, take over certain regions, and which teams might be sneaking into that back door to that 4 seed.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too, but you're right, man. It flies by. Like, it's not even, and I used to hear my uncles and stuff, years ago say, you get a little bit older, you'll understand. Things start flying by like days, years start feeling like days and weeks. And dude, if you're right, football, I think it's the anticipation is what kills it, really. Because by the time you kind of get your fix of the first 2 weeks is over with, and then you're like, all right, now we're watching football. Well, then you go a couple more weeks and you're halfway through the regular season. Luckily for us, we have a 5-week playoff that we get to salivate another month and a half, of really good football. So yeah, you're right. It's unbelievable, and it's almost over halfway now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming up on games in 2 days. So yeah, you're right. It's crazy.
This week's a week full of non-region games, and so we'll be talking about those. There'll be a lot of teams that are just kind of testing themselves a little bit. You'll have some lower classifications playing some higher classifications. We'll have one that we talk about at the end that I'm sure a lot of people know about. Ramsey's going down and playing Auburn, and it's a good game for both teams, because for Auburn, you're facing a team that won a state championship last year. And so while they're a 5A, it's not, you're still getting tested very well. And then for Ramsey, you get to go test yourself against the 7A and see, hey, what do we look like against this team? When Auburn made it a couple of years ago, they played IMG, and all their kids talked about was, hey, we played IMG so close that it gave us confidence that we could go do anything. We could go beat anybody. And they almost beat Thompson for the state championship that year. For Ramsey, this can kind of be the same thing. You go play really well against Auburn. I'm just using them as an example. It's for a lot of these teams that are going to be lower seed, lower classifications, going to play higher classifications. You go compete well with them. You go see how you can be in the game with somebody like that. It can really change how you feel about your team and what you can go and accomplish the rest of the year.
Yeah, last year, Coach Jackson, they played Auburn last year. Ramsey didn't fare so good. Auburn got the best of them last year, but Coach Jackson said that was kind of a turning point. And I don't know this gentleman's name, but I heard 2 different coaches tell me this. When they played Ramsey, after the game, their defensive coordinator, and I apologize for not knowing his name, went to the offensive coordinator of both of those losses and asked, hey, what was you seeing? How did you attack us? What was you seeing? That's the guys you want on your staff. Now, I do know Coach Jackson really well. We do know the people at Ramsey really well. So when you're hearing things like that, it's no surprise to me that they went on and ran the table and won the state. And, of course, like you said, we're going to talk about them a little bit more in a little while, what they've done recently to like Pleasant Grove and other teams. But you're absolutely right. And kudos to Keith Etheridge, because you don't have to take a game like that.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous game to take. You're at a 7A power. You're going to play a 5A, and if you lose it, you lost to a 5A. This just ain't your normal 5A, though. I mean, you know what I mean? So kudos to Keith Etheridge for taking that game.
No doubt about it. So we'll get into the games that we're about to start breaking down here. These are some of the top games. Like I said, pretty much all of these will be non-region games. There's not many region games going on this week here in the AHSAA. And getting us started, Bo, Anniston at Piedmont. This will be your AHSAA TV game of the week. So if you can't make it out there on Thursday night, make sure to tune in. You can download the WOTM app on Roku, Fire Stick, any of those type of things. You can also find the WOTM channel on Charter, DirecTV, any of those outlets. And if you have NFHS Network, it'll be on there. So a game that's going to get a lot of attention. There's not as many games this week on Thursday night. There's only like 4 games total on Thursday night this week. So I think this will be one that has a lot of attention from around the state, especially considering how the game went last season.
Yeah, and actually, this is actually a 3-2, so they actually did get a forfeit from White Plains. So, Anniston ended up last week knowing not getting to play a game because there was some violence within the city on Tuesday. So then the first step was they shut down the parade, which was scheduled for Thursday. Well, then Rico Jackson's got his guys ready. He gets a phone call at 12:30 on Friday by the superintendent saying, hey, I don't think we're going to play this game. White Plains don't want to come over here. They don't think it's safe enough. He says, we've got 13 to 15 officers, 2 dogs that's going to be here. We're secure. We're fine. You know, that happened on Tuesday. Unfortunate accident in the city, a shooting. But this is Friday. They said, well, then they counter and they say, well, we'll play this thing on Saturday. He said, well, we're not. What's one more day? Let's just play the game. This is homecoming for Anniston. Mm-hmm. So like, these are our seniors' homecoming. We can't play the game. They decide not to play the game. So they either give Anniston the win. So now Anniston's coming off that bad loss to Jacksonville, 52-24, and then a week off, an unexpected week off. So his guys are ready to get back out there and perform and play somebody. Now, Piedmont has not got out of the gate like they wanted to at all. They're 1-3, 1-2 in the region. You know, they lost it to Cherokee County 23-7. Then they lost to Cherokee County 26-7. They lost to Sylvania 23-7 in a pretty tough game. That's actually impressive to only lose that much to Sylvania. Then they went on the road and beat Plainview 24-13. And then last week was the game that kind of Pinto got injured last week. I'm not going to get into the severity of his injury or what it was. We don't talk about those things. He's out for the year, and that's a major loss for Piedmont. But they ended up losing to Ohatchee last week in 38-21 at a bad region loss. That was a bad region loss. So both of these teams need this win. And I'm telling you, Piedmont really needs this win.
Yeah.
I mean, they really need this win. He definitely don't want to lose this game right here, man. This is going to be a tough loss if he loses this game right here, man. Jonathan Miller needs this one. This is a huge game. All eyes in Calhoun County will be on that game. All eyes in the state will, because you're going to be calling that game, correct? Mm-hmm. So that's a huge game for both teams, but definitely Piedmont.
Cedar Bluff will be traveling to Spring Garden on Friday. Cedar Bluff comes in at 2-3. Spring Garden at 3-2. You look at it for Cedar Bluff, they lost to a really good Winterboro team, 33-7. Turned around, beat Sandrock, 28-7. They then lost to Woodville, 38-27. Beat Galesville, 42-12, and then lost to Decatur Heritage. So the good news is, if you're a Cedar Bluff fan, if they keep going the way they've been going all year, they're due to win a game this week, because it's been win or loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So Spring Garden's looking to break that streak. It's going to be a tough game for Cedar Bluff going to Spring Garden. I think this is a Spring Garden team that's kind of starting to find themselves now a little bit when you look at how their year's starting to go. And, had the loss to Coosa Christian early in the year that really playing them to 21-6 is starting to look better and better as well. Yeah. And then, turned around and had the tough one to Wadley. We're going to talk about Wadley later on, and I really think that now that we've gotten to see them over the last couple of weeks, you can see their team is going to be competing for a state championship there in 1A. No doubt about it. And then able to beat Victory Christian 41-7 and Winterboro 15-6. So Spring Garden, I think, kind of starting to find themselves, and they got challenged really early in the year with Coosa Christian and Wadley, two teams who are going to be right there and could be competing for the state championship later on this year. So, really interesting game here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that one goes. Victory Christian at 3-2. They'll travel to Galesville, who's 0-5, 0-3 in their region. For Victory Christian, you just need to go take care of business in this game, and it's not a knock on Galesville. They've lost 225-24 this year, and they were shut out the first 3 weeks. They scored a total of 12 points in each of the last 2 games. It's a team that hadn't been able to stop very many people, and they haven't been able to score on very many people. And, for Victory Christian, the biggest thing is you can't go into this one thinking, it's a non-region game. This game doesn't matter. This team can't beat us. You want to see Victory Christian. If you're a team that can go make some noise in the playoffs and go compete, you got to go play well in this game. And so that's what really we're going to be looking for in this ball game, is how does Victory Christian come in and treat the game? How do they handle this game? And they go do what they need to do against Galesville.
Yeah, this next game is going to be Sachs at B.B. Comer. Man, it's another one of those games we've talked about all season. This is not the team that you want to try to get your first victory over. Yeah. After what we've seen Thursday, we've heard about the talk. We've seen them in the state championship last year from B.B. Comer. So we went and placed eyes on them last Thursday. I think there's 4 to 5 average Joe's guys there on the sideline. And what we've seen, we're believers. Kamori Harris, we come in knowing he's a Memphis commit, probably one of the best looking athletes in the state, 6'1", 6'2", 235, probably 5% body fat. That guy's looks like he's chiseled out of stone. But he's not the average Joe's Sports Talk Player of the Week. The quarterback is, Devin Harvey. He had 4 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 2 passing. changed the game, had several big plays,
Also played really well on defense.
Played really well on defense, had 2 two-point conversions.
Yeah.
He scored or had a part in scoring. That's Average Joe's Player of the Week. But they got a truckload of guys, and Sachs is not doing so well. They're 0-5, 0-3 in the region. B.B. Comer is polar opposites of that. They're number 1 team in 2A. Adam Fawcett has these guys rolling. That's going to be tough sledding, but if you're Sachs, you want to compete against the best, you want to shock the world and turn your season around, this is how you do it. You get a victory this week. You're going to be up against it. You're going to be ice skating uphill, so to speak, but it's been done before. We've seen Gadsden High, what was it, Reggie, 0-5, go win a state championship? 1-5, go win a state championship at one time. I'm not saying Sachs is going to do that, but I'm saying we've seen stuff like this happen before, but good luck. I mean, if you're going to beat this B.B. Comer team.
Well, and I got to see Sachs 2 weeks ago when they played Dadeville, and while it ended up being 56-14, you can see there's some players there. They're just really young. And so I think if this community will trust Coach Freeney and what he's trying to do there, give him some time, you're going to see Sachs get back up. I mean, they got a quarterback there that, he looks like he could go play linebacker for some 6A and 7As right now. I mean, he's huge.
So does Reggie.
Yeah. Childersburg will be traveling to Vincent on Friday night. This is actually a really good football game. You got 3A Childersburg. They're sitting there at 3-2, 2-1. They beat Mumford early in the year. They lost 34-6 to B.B. Comer, but hey, Vincent lost 36-0 to B.B. Comer. So, that's not really saying much there. They competed really well with a good Randolph County team who's undefeated, lost that game 38-28, and then turned around and beat Weaver 42-29, Sachs 42-31. The most concerning thing for Childersburg is they give up a lot of points. And so this is a Vincent offense that's going to look to kind of get back going. And, you were at the game. I called the game last week. Vincent got shut out, but Vincent moved the football. Vincent kind of stopped themselves. I mean, there was 3 different times they got inside the 20-yard line and didn't score points in the game. So, Vincent was ranked number 6 last week. I think they fell out of the polls this week, but this is still a really good football team. It's going to win a lot of games and really could run the table the rest of this year and be 9-1 going into the postseason.
If you looked at Vincent before the game and just watched the 2 warm up, you'd think, I don't know who's going to win this game.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, if you really watch the game, I mean, there's just certain little things that happened in the game that really kind of affected the score being what it was. And part of it was B.B. Comer being really good, but Vincent could have done a couple of other things that would have really helped them out in that ball game. So I'm looking forward to this game, looking forward to seeing how it goes. And for Childersburg, I'm going to see them in Dadeville here in a couple of weeks. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how they compete. If they compete really well with Vincent, that's going to show, hey, that's another team in that region there with Walter Wellborn and Randolph County and Dadeville that could pop up and be right there competing for a home playoff spot. Glencoe will be traveling to Holly Pond. Glencoe's 1-3, 0-3 in their region. Holly Pond's 0-5, 0-3. Look, Glencoe got off to a great start. It's kind of been a good story for what they've been able to do considering the situation that they've had. And they beat Weaver 24-20. Since then, they've played some pretty good competition. I mean, lose 47-7 to Hoax Bluff, who competed really well with Geraldine and got a big win over Westbrook Christian last week. They lost 56-34 to Westbrook Christian and 35-7 to Plainview. That's a pretty good schedule. They'd open up the year. And so now you get to come back down. You get to play Holly Pond. And so for Glencoe, getting a win here would be huge. It'd get some confidence back in that group. And you maybe can see them get going here towards the second half of the season. Susan Moore will be traveling to Locust Fork. This is actually a very underrated football game in this whole entire state, in my opinion. You got Susan Moore coming in at 4-1, 3-0 overall. Locust Fork is undefeated, 5-0, 2-0 in their region. Susan Moore lost 20-0 to Douglas to start the year, and since then all they've done is win football games. 33-6 over West End, 33-0 over Danville, 36-0 over Asbury, and then 35-16 over Vinemont. And Susan Moore actually leads this series with Locust Fork all time, 39-19. You look on the other side for Locust Fork, they beat a pretty good Appalachian team, 61-20 to start the year, then beat J.B. Pennington 41-20, Holly Pond 68-28, Cleveland 42-0, and Cold Springs 56-8. I think it's safe to say outside of Susan Moore playing Douglas early in the season, it's going to be the best competition for both of these teams that they've seen all year. And so should be a good test right here at the midway point to kind of see where they're at. And for Susan Moore, you'd love nothing more than to beat a team that's undefeated right here and kind of ruin their undefeated season and take a lot of momentum into the second half of region play coming up. I
was at Locust Fork Stadium yesterday and watched Lily play in a volleyball game. This is a beautiful stadium if you guys have never been out there.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. They do a great job over there.
Raglan will be traveling to Pleasant Valley. It's another underrated game. You look at Raglan, they're 2-3, but look at who they've lost to.
Yeah.
Vincent, Randolph County, and Wadley. So Pretty good. I mean, we told you how good Vincent is.
Jeez.
We told you Wadley's a team that's going to compete for 1A, and then Raglan, Vincent, really, really good, and right there in 2A, being able to compete for a state championship. So outside of that, they've beaten the teams they needed to beat, Donahoe and Southeastern. Very, very important game, I think, here for Raglan. You want some confidence. You want some kind of momentum going into the second half. No better opportunity than getting a win over undefeated Pleasant Valley. They're 4-0, 3-0 in the region. They beat Donahoe 40-0, West End 34-14, Holly Pond 15-14, and Cleveland 21-16. I do think it's safe to say that Raglan will be the best competition that Pleasant Valley has faced all year, and so it'll be interesting to see how Pleasant Valley handles that. But if Pleasant Valley can get through this undefeated 5-0, all of a sudden you're going to start looking at them and putting them as one of those teams that can go up there and compete a little bit.
Coach Nix, I was out there visiting with him 2 weeks ago. Yes, 2 weeks ago I was out there visiting him, seen their new weight room. So they got a lot of good things going around. They won the Helmet of the Year through FNN recently, which I noticed their helmet when the season started. It's phenomenal. Coach Nix he's kind of worked up to this. He's took his bumps and bruises in that 3A Region 6, and now he's handing out some of these losses that he'd taken over the years. So I'm proud of Coach Nix and what he's doing there. And you're right. If they get that one, look out.
Yeah.
That's a good one. This next one's going to be Sandrock, who's 1-3, 1-2 in the region, at West End. Walnut Grove, who's 2-3, 1-2 in the region. Reggie went out and watched them play Gaston last week, and they got a big victory, 53-16. For Sandrock, it's been an up and down season for them. They lost 48-22 to Spring Garden, and then they lost 28-7 to Cedar Bluff, then 50-7 to Pisgah, but then turned around and won a football game. And Coach Heath was on the final drive and talked about one of the best defensive performances he's seen since he's been at Sandrock over section, 14-7. And then last week, he thought they could compete. I thought they could compete, but they just didn't compete too good against Collinsville, who's only 5 miles away from them in a rivalry game. They end up getting beat 59-14.
Yeah. They also caught Collinsville coming off of losing to Pisgah
and ticked off.
Yeah,
ready
to prove something.
Yeah, and then no better opponent to have than a rival coming to town, because you're going to try to unload the clip.
Yep.
And so it's going to be a really interesting game. On the West End side of things, they've had a few injuries throughout the year, and as we already talked about, big win last week versus Gaston. You know what I mean? And they started the season out 48-0 over Galesville in the season opener, and we thought, here we go. Well, Galesville's turned out to not be as good as we thought they were going to be, and then they turned around and lost to Susan Moore 33-6 in a rivalry game right there, and then to Pleasant Valley 34-14, which we just talked about them. But then they've come back and won a couple of games since then, so it's going to be interesting to me. Both of these teams really need this win, and I mean really need it bad. Obviously, overall records mean absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. What does mean something is these region records, and both of them sitting at 1-2. Now, this is not a region game, but that's the games you want to get the wins in, is the region. So from a standpoint of momentum, both of these guys need this win. Next game is going to be Gaston, 1-3, 0-2 in their region, at Collinsville. Man, Gaston's just they're playing it this year, buddy.
Yeah.
They got a tough. Alan Beckett and company's got a tough schedule this year. They're playing Collinsville. It's 3-1, 2-1. The only loss is to Pisgah, earlier this year. But if you look at Gaston, they shocked the world. Alan Beckett got there. He's there 2 weeks, and they come out of the gate and they beat Asbury by double digits, 34-14. But then since then, it's been pretty tough sledding. The 35-0 loss to Appalachian, a 46-0 loss to Southeastern, and then last week to West End, 53-16. Definitely not what they want at Gaston, but you got to give this man time. They've got some injuries there. They've had some guys transfer out there. You got to give him time too. He's got to get his stuff in place. And I know we live in a give it to me now TikTok society where everybody wants it instantly, but that ain't always the case. Collinsville, they beat Galesville 47-0. They beat Section 39-6. Then they lost to Pisgah in that shocker, 66-13. Nobody thought it was going to be that. Everybody thought that was going to be a four-quarter game, and it wouldn't. But then they bounced back, and they steamrolled Sandrock last week, 59-14. So they just need to kind of, stay the course. That's what they need to do in this game. They should be all right in this one. Next one's going to be Plainview, who's coming off a big victory last week over Glencoe, 35-7, at the Fife Red Devils. And what have they done since their loss to Geraldine earlier this year? They've outscored their opponents 170-0. Now, interesting point in this game. The Pruitts versus Coach Benefield. And you want some X's and O's, schematic X's and O's, this is going to be your football game right here.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you got Dale Pruitt, Jeremy Pruitt, scheming up a game plan to beat Coach Benefield and Fife. These two teams only separate each other by a few miles, like we talked about Collinsville. They're even closer than Collinsville and Sandrock are. So this is a rivalry. These guys go to church together. They're related to each other. They see each other at the grocery store. They, you know, work with each other. B-Man works with several Plainview guys, for example. This is a good old-fashioned DeKalb County rivalry. Both of these are really good football teams. Whoever executes the best is going to take this one to the house. Kick it back over to you, my friend.
Valley Head will be traveling to Eider. Valley Head 1-3, 0-2 in the region. Eider 2-2, 1-2 in their region. You know, you look at it for Valley Head, they've played a pretty good schedule. North Sand Mountain, Decatur Heritage, and Coosa Christian. That's their 3 losses on the year. They were able to beat Section, and they beat them 56-0. So I think Valley Head is a lot better than what their record shows. And, you know, I know it's a group that's coached very well and is going to go out and play hard every single night. Almost a must-win situation, I think, for them and building some confidence back in that group and what they can do in the second half. And for Eider, you kind of did the same thing last year. You started out 2-0 and then lost the rest of your ball games the rest of this. Well, they've done that this year now. And so this would be a huge win for Eider if you can get that win, kind of get over that hump, get the 3rd win of the season. All of a sudden, I think that from a player standpoint, they'll kind of start believing, hey, we can do this. Hey, this is something that we can go accomplish. So I think it's a very important game for both these two teams and one that both of them really need to kind of get their seasons going here.
Tyler Dalton thinks they can do it.
Yeah.
The Eider Insider.
Hey, we know Tyler Dalton thinks they can get it done. Shout out to Tyler.
Everybody knows Tyler Dalton. He's an animal. Next one's going to be another, you know, we talked about underrated games in the state. Look at this one. Wadley at Randolph County. You know, Wadley, they shocked the world by the way they beat Spring Garden earlier. Was it 41-7, I believe? Let's go ahead and go through these scores right fast. Wadley beat Horseshoe Bend 35-7, Ranburne 49-21, Spring Garden 41-7, Donahoe 48-0, and Raglan 32-6.
Yeah, the Raglan one really stands out too, 32-6.
Yeah, and then, you know, this is a Raglan team that I know for a fact has improved. And Horseshoe Bend's, you know, they've been good as of late. You know, to get that one out of the gate was the big one. And then Randolph County beat Woodland 41-0. The Childersburg, Randolph County beat Childersburg, who's been on the rise this season. We've talked about Childersburg several times, 41-28. Raglan 40-34, and Weaver 42-29. So this is going to be a test of wheels right here. Wadley does have to travel to Randolph County. It's a non-region game, but man, I'm telling you, this is going to be.
It won't shock me if Wadley wins this game.
Yeah, that one could go
1A versus 3A.
That one could go either way, honestly. I mean, that's going to be a tough one. Our next one is going to be a big Calhoun County game right here. We got Jacksonville, 4-1, 2-1 overall in the region, at Ohatchee, who's 4-1, 2-1 in their region. Non-region game again. Jacksonville has pretty much put itself firmly in the top 10 in the state by their performance on the field. Listen to these numbers. They beat a very tough Boaz team, 43-21 out of the gate. Then a cross-county rival in Alexandria, 45-21. Then they lost to Handley. Just about everybody in 4A is going to lose to Handley. There may be 1 or 2 teams that can compete with them. But don't take too much into that Handley loss to Central Clay last week, because I promise
Central Clay's pretty good.
Central Clay is very good. But then they turn around and beat Anniston 52-24. And then followed that up with a shutout victory over Talladega 51-0. But you look at Ohatchee, shocking this year. I'm not saying that, well, I will say it. Nobody expected this because they started 0-7 last year, snuck into the playoffs barely. Well, nobody expected them to come out of the gate on fire like they have. I mean, I thought they'd be improved. I didn't know they was going to be like this. So check these scores out. Ohatchee beat Sachs 32-8, Walter Welborn 26-7, Westbrook Christian in a shootout 34-33, then was down 24-22 at the half till Sylvania, and then the wheels came off in the second half, and they ended up losing 64-34. But then turned around when their head should have been down. They should have had their head down after the close loss to Sylvania and the way they hit the second half, but it wasn't. They beat Piedmont, who they've had some success of late. I think they've won 3 out of 4 regular seasons versus Piedmont. And but then they turn around and beat Piedmont 38-21. So I don't care what anybody says. This Ohatchee team's surprising some people. And I look for that one to be a good game. All right, this next one, man, this is rough right here. Section, man, 0-5, 0-3 in the region. We love Riley Edwards, great friend of the show. He's, we've been friends with Coach Edwards since it started when he was at Collinsville, an assistant on Ernie Willingham's staff. They're traveling to Westbrook Christian. Westbrook's 2-2, 1-2, shown several signs of life under Steve Smith.
Well, it could easily be 3-1.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Very, very easily. I mean, you look at that loss to Ohatchee we just mentioned, in one of the biggest shootouts there was. I mean, they're a batted ball away from winning that football game. So, and again, Riley Edwards is one of those coaches wanting that first win, but here's the problem. They've been outscored 235-28 this year. 13 total points in the last 4 weeks. And now you're going to be facing Steve Smith and James Blanchard. This is going to be a tough, tall task for them right there in Rainbow City, literally 2 miles from my house, for them to get a victory over there against Steve Smith and his bunch. Now, they're coming off a pretty bad loss to Hoax Bluff, 47-21, and a shocking loss. I didn't think that they would lose. I thought they could lose that game. I didn't think they could lose it in that
47-21.
No.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a ticked-off bunch, and they're going to be out for blood in this game. So that's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, it should be a fun one there. Cleveland at 0-4 and 0-2 in the region will be traveling to JV Pennington, but Cleveland's another group that you look at 0-4 and you think, oh, they're not having a great year. Well, look at who they've played this year. Aniana, Appalachian, Locust Fork, Pleasant Valley. Pretty good schedule.
You got that right.
They've been in the last couple of games. They were in the game with Appalachian, and Appalachian scored late to go up and win that one 34-20. And they were in the game with Pleasant Valley. They lost that one 21-16, and then Locust Fork's just really, really good. So.
Yeah. They are.
For JB Pennington, they come in at 3-2. They're 2-1 in the region, and for JB Pennington, you got to come in. You got to take care of business here. It's two communities that are close to each other. It's going to be a little bit of a rivalry feeling here with this game, and you just got to go take care of business. And you got a Cleveland team that's going to be coming in. They're starving to get their first win of the season, and they know they've been close. They've been close over the last couple of weeks, so they can kind of feel it. For JB Pennington, I think it's going to be very important to come out and get out to an early start, a quick start, and kind of try to put Cleveland away to where they don't have any belief. The longer you let a team that doesn't have any wins hang around, the more trouble you can get in. And so really going to be a fun game to watch when those two take the field on Friday night with those two communities there.
It's kind of like me and you on MLB The Show.
Yeah.
You let me hang around 7-8 innings and I'm only losing 2-3 runs. I think I can win this thing. Go ahead.
DAR will be traveling to Clements on Friday night. For DAR, it's been a rough year. They got a young group, so this is a group that you're going to have to kind of stick with for a little bit with Coach Davis. They've got a young quarterback that's playing, and it's just going to take – you got to get more experience. You got to get bigger. You got to get stronger, and they're heading in the right direction. For Clements, they come in at 2-3, 1-2. They beat Holly Pond 45-12. They then lost in double overtime to West Limestone, so easily could have won that game and have a winning record right now. Then lost 59-9 to Lauderdale County, who's really good. And then they had to take on what may be the best team in 3A in Mars Hill, and they lost that one 61-3. But then got a big win. They turned around after getting beat really handily by Mars Hill. They beat Colbert Heights 50-37 last week. So to me, that shows a lot of resiliency from this Clements team. But, if you're DAR, you're looking for your first win of the year, no better opportunity than to go to Clements on Friday night and get a win over there. And should be a fun matchup with those two teams. And for DAR, you just kind of want to see yourself kind of get going a little bit, see some offense get on the board, play a little bit better defense. I mean, you've been outscored 268-49 this year. Get some stops, get some points on the board, be in the ball game late, and see what it does for you.
You got that right. Hey, Clements. A lot of people's losing to Mars Hill like that. I actually talked to Coach Higgins today.
Yeah.
They're playing Russellville this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
That's going to be a fun one.
I think Reggie's going to talk about that game in a little bit.
Reggie, you going to talk about that one? On the Brad Watkins game of the week?
Yes, sir.
Shout out Brad Watkins. That's our guy right there. Cherokee County, 5-0, 3-0 in region, is at Munford in a non-region game, but a very important game. Really important. Coach Kelly, we did his coaches show today. He challenged the guys. He didn't like the body language. He didn't like the effort late last week, so he challenged them before their game last week versus Hanceville. Basically told them, he went on a rant. he snapped, watching practice film and stuff, and he lost it. He said, but it was for the betterment of the team, and then they come out and perform with a 55-0 win last week over Hanceville. This team's flexing its muscles right now. We knew out of the gate they were going to be good. We didn't know they were going to be this good. Beating Alexandria 48-14, Piedmont 26-7, Good Hope 35-0, Aniana 49-21 in a rematch of last year's semifinal team, and a showdown of last year's 4A back of the year.
Yeah.
And probably the front runner for 4A back of the year this year, and Jacob Cornejo. And Cornejo performs with 420 yards in that game. And then last week just demolished Hanceville 55-0. Mumford, they've been a tale of two different halves of this season. They beat Talladega 47-16, but then they got a loss to Childersburg, who we've talked about, 28-22. They lost to Anniston 47-14, and then they lost to Cleveland County 37-21. So they need to show some resilience in this game. Sylvester Smith, I believe is the gentleman's name that's at Auburn now, was a phenomenal player. And if you watch Coach Kelly's show this week, you will see him say what a delightful pleasure it was to turn on film, to break down and cut a tape defensively and not seeing that guy over there dressed out for Mumford. He said it made my day. There you go.
Bibb County traveling to Andalusia. This is a big game, not really around our region up here in Northeast Alabama, but it's a huge game in the state. It's 4A Region 3 against 4A Region 4. Could have a possible rematch of this in the playoffs on down the road. And is Bibb County a new 4A team that could be in the mix right here? I think we're going to find out on Friday night. Now, to me, there's a little bit of a difference between who these two teams have played. For Andalusia, to start the year, they dominated 42-8. Then they beat Anniston 39-0, Dale County 56-6, Bullitt County 50-0, and Montgomery Academy 63-19. On the other side for Bibb County, they went and challenged themselves with a 6A in Chilton County to start the year. They beat them 33-21. They beat a good Gordo team 33-21. Then they beat West Blockton 34-13, ACA 22-20, and then beat Sipsey Valley 42-21 last week. So I think that Bibb has played a little bit of a better schedule, really outside of the Anniston game. I mean, Andalusia had been challenged. Montgomery Academy's not the same MA that they were 2 years ago when they played for a state championship. That's the part that's going to be interesting to see in this game is, does that help Bibb County? The fact you've been out there with a 6A that has a linebacker committed to go play at Auburn. The fact that you've been out there with a Gordo team who year in and year out is always competing for a state championship. That's what I'm going to be looking for when I'm looking at the score of this game and how things go. If Andalusia can dominate Bibb County, there's no doubt who the favorite is in 4A. And it's no disrespect to Cherokee County, but you got the defending champs who would then be 6-0 and would have beaten another undefeated team in this classification. To me, they'd be firmly at the top. So very interesting game here. And if Bibb County gets a win here, that's going to open up a lot of eyes around the state because everybody's kind of been counting them out. It's Handley and Anniston and
Catholic.
Montgomery Catholic, Jacksonville, and Andalusia. All of a sudden, Bibb County would insert their name into that mix and be a team that everybody's going to be talking about when the playoffs roll around. Hoax Bluff travels to White Plains Friday night. Look, for Hoax Bluff, you got to take care of business here. White Plains not had a great season. They lost to Ramburn 31-28, 22-14 to Oak Grove, 41-0 to Handley, and then they technically forfeited last week's game with Anniston. So, they've been in two of the ball games. They could have beaten Ramburn. They could have beaten Oak Grove, which is positive, but then Handley really took it to them. And for Hoax Bluff, this is a team that's getting better as this year goes on. They took on a Southside team. I mean, they're improving.
They've shocked some people.
Yeah, and they got to see a really good 5A team. And Southside, then they went and beat Glencoe, and then I don't think anybody saw them playing a 10-point game with Geraldine, and they competed really well with them and turned around and dominated Westbrook Christian the very next week. So, look, for Hoax Bluff, got to go take care of business here. Got to keep the momentum that you kind of built going, and I think Hoax Bluff is a group that they've got a chance to really make a lot of noise here in the second half of the season. Springville will be traveling to Aniana. I don't think that there's any other way around it for Aniana. You've got to win this game. You got to keep pushing forward and keep improving. I think that you lose 49-21 to a team that you played twice last year, you competed really well with. It humbles you a little bit, but they bounced back last week, got a good win over Fultondale, who looks to be a lot better this year as well. And so for Springville on the other side, you beat Etowah to start the year, which I think was a surprise to a lot of people, but it kind of got them going. They competed very well with Mortimer Jordan, who outside of Parker has been beating the crap out of everybody in 6A.
Including Gardendale.
Yeah, and then competed really well with Leeds, 23-7. Lost 35-21 to Southside, turned around, they beat Alexandria 49-21 last week. This is a Springville team that you can't really look at their record. You have to watch them. It's a good football team. For Aniana, you need to go take care of business in a non-region game, really build up a lot of momentum to. More than likely, you're not getting that 1 seed. Cherokee County's going to have the 1 seed, but you can build up some momentum to go get that 2 seed, still host a playoff game. That's no matter what, that's the goal. It doesn't matter if you're the 1 seed or the 2 seed, just hosting that first round, very, very important. And so Aniana's got all that still right there in front of them.
Yeah, and they got Phil Phillips on the sidelines, my friend.
Yeah, man, that helps too.
That helps too. Scottsboro, my guys. Shout out Justin Thrasher, Heath Logie, and Sugar Shane. One of the best announced teams in the state of Alabama. They're fantastic. You can hear them every Friday night on 101.7 The Torch. Those guys do a fantastic job. Scottsboro out to an undefeated season is at Priceville. And, Priceville last year shocked a lot of people. But this Scottsboro team, much like you talked about earlier with Hoax Bluff, they kind of need to go take care of the business in this game. They started this season out beating Fort Payne in the Top Cat Trophy. They won that 56-51. They beat North Jackson 44-15. They beat Boaz 63-38. Then last week they were trailing 14-0 to Arab. Then reeled off 28 points unanswered to win that game going away. Priceville lost they lost 21-14 to Plainview. Then 35-0 to Fairfield. Then beat Madison County 48-21. Beat DAR 50-12. And New Hope 36-14. So they've been on a 3-game winning streak on a roll. But this ain't DAR and this ain't New Hope they're playing this week. They're playing one of the hottest teams in 6A offensively, a team that's averaging 50 points a game running the flex prone triple option. And Coach Bell has those guys rolling. And what he's done since he took over when he left Oak Mountain to now is simply phenomenal. Scottsboro is playing the best football they've played in many, probably since Patrick Nix was there with Bo Nix.
No,
I think. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was going to say, I think getting a 28-14 win was big for that team last week because they got down early. And then they held them to 14 the rest of the ball game and was able to win a game where you didn't go score 50 points. And so I think that's going to go a long way for the Scottsboro team. They can see, hey, we can win a game where maybe everything isn't clicking that night on offense or another team plays us well defensively. They stepped it up on the defensive side when they needed to because the biggest concern, obviously, is giving up 51, 38, 15 North Jackson, and then the 14 early points to Arab. But they found something in that game last week, and I think that could really help this football team on down the road.
In the long run, I absolutely agree with you. Wins like that mean more than blowout wins, in my opinion. Next game is going to be Montgomery Catholic, who's undefeated again, and Caleb disrespected earlier by not mentioning them as one of the top teams in 4A, at Demopolis, who's 3-1, 2-0 in their region. Look, for Montgomery Catholic, it's the same story every year. They walk the dog in the regular season and have come up short in the playoffs for whatever reason. This Demopolis team beat American Christian 29-20. They lost 35-7 to Jackson, but we all know what Jackson is. Beat Selma 40-0 and Marbury 37-8. Catholic pretty much been total domination all year. More the same from them. Caleb went over 10,000 yards last week as a quarterback for them. I look for Montgomery Catholic, and look, if you're a Montgomery Catholic fan, you're spoiled. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you you're spoiled. Enjoy these wins. Enjoy all these blowout wins. Enjoy these. You don't have many close games, and that's a good thing. Enjoy them.
No, because ask Hoover. It doesn't last forever.
That's right.
I mean, because, Hoover kind of went through a time period where their fans were spoiled because they were just blowing everybody out.
Yeah,
and
people quit coming to the mat.
Yeah, they would kill to have that now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you make a good point. And if you're cheering for something, fight any of these teams, try to enjoy this. Don't just move on to the next one. Enjoy what you're going through right now because it doesn't last forever.
And go watch, be part of history. Watch these guys perform. I'm telling you, what Juice is doing at Catholic is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Yeah, they haven't won the state. I get that, okay? I get that. And I'm sure he gets it. Trust me. I know him personally, talk to him all the time. Enjoy these wins. What they're doing is phenomenal. You have a lot to be proud of if you are a fan of Catholic right now. Next one's going to be, man, this is another good game.
Yeah.
Parker, and I think Josh is going to this game. Parker is undefeated on the season. They're 5-0, 3-0 in the region. At Pleasant Grove, who's 3-1, 2-1. Now, this is a non-region game.
It's the Cousin Bowl.
It is the Cousin Bowl. Now, Frank Warren is one of my favorite coaches in the state.
Yeah.
Darryl LeBeau has been nothing but fantastic to us as we went out and interviewed him, his players. Both of these guys are class act guys. Both of these coaches have great football teams and two bright young coaches in the state of Alabama. There's no losers in this game, but somebody's going to lose on the scoreboard. When I say that, I mean that wholeheartedly. The loss to Ramsey is the one that's going to stick out to everybody. Mm-hmm. 49-17, Pleasant Grove lost to Ramsey. And that was kind of shocking to the host state. Now, when you go to look at this game, you're going to say, yeah, Parker's done what Parker's supposed to do. Parker beat that same Ramsey team 20-17 in a neutral site game, basically. But since then, they've done nothing but just steamroll people. They beat J.O. 49-6, Mortimer Jordan 62-28 in the game we were at, beat Gardendale 41-22, and they opened the season with a 55-0 win over Ramsey. Again, another execution game. In my opinion, whoever executes the best in this game, both guys got athletes, is going to take that one to the house.
Buckhorn will be traveling right here to Guntersville on Friday night. Should be a fun game here. And for Guntersville, this is a big opportunity. We talked about lower classifications playing higher classification. 5A against 6A. Buckhorn doesn't seem to be the same team that they were a year ago. A year ago, Buckhorn was really, really good. And I think they lost a good senior group. And so they've got some young, inexperienced guys that are trying to get their feet wet. But Coach Patterson's going to get them going in the right direction. There's no doubt about that. He's done a great job up there at Buckhorn. And so, for Guntersville, this is a big opportunity. You get this game at home. It's a chance to really make a statement win. And they've had some good wins this year. I mean, 14-10 over Southside. You go to Lawrence County and beat them 41-7. Then you came back and beat Douglas 56-14 the week after Douglas played ARAB to a 7-point game. And then you dominated Boaz in a rivalry game this past week. It's been a great start to the season for Coach Reese and his group there at Guntersville. A great opportunity to kind of keep things going. And for Buckhorn, a chance to get a win over a good football team. Doesn't matter what classification Guntersville is. They're a very good football team. For Buckhorn, you need some confidence, need to get things going because the two best teams that you've played this year really dominated you in Helena and Gadsden City. So, and then they struggle with Hazel Green, who is not a great football team. My brother coaches there, and I can tell you it's not a knock on them. They got a first-year head coach, and they're trying to work out some kinks, and they struggle with them. So for Buckhorn, coming down here getting a win over Guntersville would be huge. And for Guntersville, beating a team from a 6A, staying undefeated, carrying a lot of momentum in the second half of the year. Very, very big football game for both those teams.
Next game is going to be Brewer, 3-2, 2-1 in the region, at Sardis, 3-1, 0-1 in the region, but their one loss was to ARAB this year. Now, Sardis lost to ARAB in a nail-biter, 29-26, but then beat Columbia last week 42-8 in a game that they did not perform well in. B.J. Brooks was not happy about that game. He said it was a very sloppy, muddy, ugly game. They did get a win, and he called himself out. He said, I shouldn't be that guy, but I am that guy. Complaining about a win, I should enjoy the win. He said, I do enjoy it, but when you look at the performance and you cut on the tape, it makes me not a happy camper.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
And I see his point, but they were also coming off of a big emotional game.
A big emotional
It's hard
loss.
to do. So
it's hard to bounce back. Now, this Brewer team, they beat Hansville 23-7. They lost to ARAB. Both of these teams lost to ARAB 28-13. Beat Ardmore 21-19 in a close game. Beat East Limestone 41-16, and then they lost 23-0 Lawrence County. They're going to be looking to bounce back. Sardis is going to be looking to maintain this role they're on right now because B.J. Brooks, since he's gotten there, this is a totally different Sardis team, totally different mindset. So they want to keep rolling with that mindset. They want to entrench some winning ways in there, not any kind of losing ways or woe with me ways. So that's going to be an interesting game on both standpoint right there. This other one's Oxford. And I'm going to tell you this right now. You can write this down. Oxford 5-0, 3-0 in the region. They're at Hartselle. Now, this is a non-region game. Hartselle's 4-1, 2-0 in their region. If Oxford beats this Hartselle team, look out.
yeah.
This is the game that's circled by everybody. If they're for real, then let's see what they do against Hartselle. Because Hartselle going into last week was ranked 6. I don't know what the rankings is now. Did they move up or down? Or
They come out tonight.
Yeah.
they come out tonight? Okay, well, they were 6 heading into last week, got a huge victory over Gadsden City, 31-28. So if Oxford can win this game right here, look out. Oxford this has already been a year of first times. The first time they beat McAdory, first time they've been ranked since Keith's been gone. All right, so then you look right here, they beat Huntsville, 7A Huntsville 35-6. They beat Shades Valley 42-13. Huffman, they was beating them 50 at halftime. Last week's the game where I said, okay, here we are. They beat Pinson Valley 40-6, and not even close. So now Hartsville's only loss on the year. Let's see, they come out of the gate and they lost to Austin, who's a 7A team, 28-17. But since then, they beat J.O. 35-8, Coleman 42-0, Columbia 44-0, and beat Gadsden City, which we just mentioned, 31-28. So they're for real. This is the for real bowl.
Yeah.
Whoever wins this is a real contender and should be there in the end when the smoke clears. Now, next game, Gadsden City is at Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa. Things don't get any easier for Gadsden City, man. They got a schedule, bro. I mean, they got a schedule.
Right.
Look at this.
Coach Smith challenged his group.
Yeah, he's challenging his group, man. I mean, look at this. They come out of the gate playing 7A Carver Montgomery. All right? And they beat them 37-20. Then they lost to Hewitt Trustful 42-27 in a very competitive game. Then beat Buckhorn 49-14. Then the shootout of all shootouts versus Fort Payne in a huge region game. They won 63-41. And then lost the heartbreaker last week to Hartsville 31-28. So Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, undefeated. They've beat everybody. And this is another one of those games, man. Like Ollie Smith, you want to talk about challenging your guys? Look at this. I mean, look who they've played so far. Carver Montgomery, Hewitt Trustful, and now an undefeated Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa. Bro, that's challenging your group.
No, no doubt.
That's
gonna pay off
100%
down the
challenge your
line
group.
for 'em.
Yep, let me hand it over this. Let's see.
ARAB will be traveling to Fort Payne. This is a huge ball game here. For ARAB, you lost your first game last week to Scottsboro, 28-14. You've kind of been right there on the verge of losing the last couple of weeks. Douglas played them really close. Then Sardis obviously played them a 3-point game. And then finally this past week, Scottsboro gets the best of them after ARAB jumped up 14-0 in the ball game. You now go to Fort Payne, who does nothing but score points. 51 to Scottsboro, 55 against Etowah, 61 against May Jemison, and then 41 to Gadsden City. They've scored 40-plus in every single ball game. This is going to be a good football game for both teams, I think. I think for ARAB, it's a good bounce-back game coming off of last week. You're going to be a little bit more focused. You finally get that loss. You kind of tell they were teetering on it. They were right there on the verge of losing to Douglas and right on the verge of losing to Sardis. And you don't lose either. Well, now you finally lose. I think you'll get a team that's a little bit more focused and a little bit more kind of bought into paying attention to the little details. And for Fort Payne, you were coming off that loss to Gadsden City. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for this team. You got to see some of the stuff that they did against Scottsboro last week. How do you respond from the bye week against a really good ARAB team, and can you build up some momentum to go into the second half of this region schedule? And I mean, Fort Payne's in the same boat that we were talking about with Aniana earlier. You're battling to get that 2 seed in the region to be able to host a playoff game. And getting a big win over a good ARAB team would go a long way towards building some momentum into the second half of region play and being able to do just that.
All right, this next game is going to be Southside Gadsden. I don't know why I keep calling them Southside Gadsden. Southside, we know. Southside and Boaz is about to play. Real interesting game right here from the standpoint. Southside's 4-1, 3-0. They're the only 3-0 team in that region.
And could be 5-0.
Could be 5-0. They lost, 14-10 to Gunnersville in another nail biter. But since that time, they've reeled off these wins right here. They beat Hoax Bluff 37-12, who's we've seen what Hoax Bluff's done to some of these other teams. Lincoln 29-8, Springville 35-21, and St. Clair County 42-13. Boaz, on the other hand, has lost. They're 2-3. They're 2-3 on the year, 0-2 in their region. They come out of the gate playing Jacksonville, which a lot of people's losing to Jacksonville. They lost to them 43-21. Then they turn around and beat a rival Albertville 48-7. But then they turn around and they lost to Scottsboro 63-38. That's nothing to hold your head down about. But then they turn around and won against Cleveland County 35-21, and then turn around and lost to rival Gunnersville 35-14.
You know what that means? They're due a win.
They're due a win this week.
There you go.
But here's the problem with that. Miles Holcomb and company is outscoring their opponents 153-68. They're running the ball. Mason Teague just crossed over the 1,000-yard mark for the season. I think they said he's the second leading rusher in the state yardage-wise. And they seem to have found their identity on the offensive side of the ball with Gage, unfortunate injury of Gage Neesmith. So it's going to be an interesting game, to say the least. And, both of these coaches and communities know each other. Both of these teams are tight-knit, so much so that their overall record all time is 12-12. So whoever wins this one is going to take the lead in that series. Should be a really interesting game.
Big one that'll be taking place down in the Mobile area on Friday night. Opelika will be traveling to Theodore. And for Opelika, they started out the year with Thompson. I thought that was going to be a lot closer game, which is a credit to Thompson. They won 44-13. They then beat JAG, which used to be Jeff Davis High School in Montgomery, 36-16. They then beat Percy Julian, which used to be Robert E. Lee High School, 44-8. And then they played Phoenix City really well as Phoenix City's been played by anybody this year, 28-18. And then turned around and beat Prattville 38-13 this past week. So a big game for Opelika traveling down to Theodore. It's a Theodore team that, they lost to Baker 36-20. Baker's really good. They're also in 7A. Then they beat Robertsdale 42-0, Murphy 39-7, beat Baldwin County 27-24 in overtime, and then lost 8-3 to Spanish Fort this past week. And yes, you heard, we talked about it on Saturday.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You had a safety. It was 2-0 at halftime.
That's right.
In this football game.
That's the one Corey was like,
yeah.
Can you believe?
Yeah. And,
when's the last time you've seen 2-0 at a halftime of a high school football game? Go ahead.
Theodore, it was 2-0 at halftime. Spanish Fort was up. Theodore made it 3-2, and Spanish Fort scored and missed a 2-point conversion. That's how you got your 8-3 score, and really big back and forth battle there between those two teams. Two really good football teams, two teams that are kind of very similar at 3-2 and 3-1 of their regions, and two teams that need a win here, big time. For Opelika, you still got Auburn to play on down the road in this region, and you still got to play Dothan and Enterprise as well. So Opelika is going to have their work cut out for them. Theodore still has to play Saraland later on this year as well. So it's two teams that if you can get a win here, it has to put a lot of confidence in your group of being able to go and compete with those level of teams. And so it should be a fun one down there around the Mobile area. Another one that's going to be taking place around Mobile, it should be a fun one. It's got a ton of star power in this one. Foley at 2-2, 0-2 in their region, and 7A will be traveling to maybe the best team in the state regardless of classification, Saraland, who's 5-0 and 4-0 in their region. Foley beat Prattville 45-19 to start the year, and then Baldwin County 37-24. They've now lost to Mary Montgomery, who is really, really good, and maybe a team that we finally see a Mobile team come out in 7A and make some noise. Mary Montgomery may be that team. And then they had a shootout with Baker 2 weeks ago, 51-44. And Foley had a bye week this past week to get ready for this game with Saraland. Saraland has beat Lipscomb, Tennessee 31-30 in overtime. They beat Murphy 54-6, St. Paul's 47-3, Spanish Fort 49-7, and Robertsdale 66-0. So pretty much since that Lipscomb game, they've given up one touchdown all season.
That's crazy.
They're really good on the defensive side of the ball, and you look at the players that are going to be in this game. You got KJ Lacey, the quarterback for Saraland. He's committed to Texas. Perry Thompson, the wide receiver for Foley. He's committed to Auburn. Ryan Williams, wide receiver for Saraland, committed to Alabama, and defensive lineman for Saraland, Antonio Coleman, committed to Alabama. And that's just four of the many college football players that are going to be playing in this football game between those two teams on Friday night.
Well, I'm
Should
going to go ahead and
be a
tell
really
you,
fun one.
Ryan Williams is the best player playing in this football game.
Yeah.
He is a cheat code. I'm not arguing with anybody. Y'all can get the messages and dog it out all you want. I promise you, he's the best football player in the game.
Yeah, no, he is. There's no doubt about it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Next game is going to be Mountain Brook, 4-1, 3-0 in the region at Hoover. 1-4 Hoover, 1-2. And you talked about this. There's a couple of these games here recently that Hoover needed to win, and if they didn't get them, they could be staring down 1-5 in the face. Well, here's that opportunity to be 1-5. And look, we know for a fact Chris Yeager is the mad scientist in high school football. Without a doubt, the best offensive line coach. Without a doubt, one of the best schematic coaches, on the grass, so to speak, coaches in the state of Alabama. And then you got Hoover, who's coming in limping with their head down. They better be ready to play football. Yeah. I'm just telling you. A lot of people gave up on Mountain Brook because they come out and they lost to Vestavia 35-10 right out of the gate. But not me, my friend. That's when you hit that, you grab the pen and you do that not so fast, my friend, Lee Corso on them. Because let me tell you what's happened since then. They beat James Clemens 18-13, beat Minor 28-0, beat Woodlawn 51-0, beat J.O. 49-0. Do you see where I'm going with this? Shutout, shutout, shutout. And then 13 points, shutout, shutout, shutout in a row. Hoover better be ready to play. I'm telling you right now, they better be ready to play. If they come in with their head down and limping into this game, it's going to be a long night for them.
Yeah.
they're going to get beat.
One thing is, it's safe to say that Hoover's going to be the best team Mountain Brook has played since Vestavia, though, and that includes James Clemens.
With no doubt, but I also think Vestavia is a much better team than Hoover, and they've already beat them, and they beat them by 3 scores. But I think that Hoover was lucky to only lose by 3 scores to these guys. I mean, I'm honest. So I'm telling you, I'd give Mountain Brook an edge in this game.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, it's crazy to think we could be sitting here talking about a 1-5 Hoover team, which just
Bro, what would be the Vegas odds on that if you took it before the season started? You could win. You put down $1 and win a house.
Plus 10,000.
Yeah, plus 10,000.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
So, well, that does it for our games, our regular games that we have. We're going to take a quick little break. So if you're tuning in, make sure to stay right here, and we'll have our Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week with Reggie Davis coming up next. He'll break down the 5 biggest matchups throughout the whole entire state as we head into Week 5 here of the AHSAA season. So stay tuned for more right here with Average Joe Sports Talk. Back here live at Wenzel's Oyster House up here in Gunnersville for our Road to the Blue Map Week 5 edition. It's now time for our Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week. Make sure to check out Watkins Heating and Cooling if you're up around the Northeast Alabama area. Look, it's getting to that time of year where, we're in lows being the 50s and highs being 90. So make sure to have your HVAC unit ready to go, and there's no better person than Brad Watkins with Watkins Heating and Cooling. You can see their phone number right there on the screen, and make sure to give him a call, and make sure that you keep all your stuff up to date, because you do not want to be in the house freezing later on this year. That I can promise you. Reggie, big-time matchups this week, and really the first one here is one that a lot of people up here in Northeast Alabama have been looking forward to all season. We got Pisgah traveling to Sylvania. Really, really big-time football will be played on Friday night there in Sylvania.
Yeah, man, when I was looking at the games for this week, there were so many good games I wanted to, include in this segment, but this one stood out because you've got two of the hottest teams on Sand Mountain getting ready to go head-to-head. You got Pisgah coming in 4-0, 3-0 in the region versus Sylvania that's 4-0 and 3-0 in their region. Both teams have gotten off to a really hot start, and like I mentioned last week, Pisgah is one of those teams you can really kind of look at. They can definitely contend for 2A North. That showdown with Fife coming up in a couple of weeks is going to be huge, and that's probably another game that we'll be talking about later on. Pisgah started the season off pretty hot. They came out and beat a Lexington team 42-27. San Rock 50-7, and a game that probably shocked a lot of people. They beat Collinsville 6-13, and then last week they beat Ida 46-16. They're outscoring their opponents 206-43. So Pisgah they can definitely score, and their defense they do what they have to do, which is their job is keeping the other offense off the field and out the end zone, and they're doing a very good job with that. Sylvania looks like we talk about them every week because they're in the big game. It seems like week after week, they're big, physical up front. They just come out and just physically beat you. Starting the season, they beat a team, beat Sacs 49-14, which is a team that I think a lot of people thought Sacs was going to be pretty good, as they normally are. But they're having a tough time this year, with the coaching change and whatnot. And then they beat Piedmont, a team they got beat by twice last year, 23-7, and then they get into somewhat of a shootout with an upstart AHSAA team. Like y'all mentioned earlier, AHSAA it's kind of surprised some people, at how they've come out and started the season. They beat them 64-34, and they beat Geraldine 37-16 in a very good, big game last week. So this is going to be an interesting matchup with these two. I can't wait to see the final score on this one.
No, yeah, it should be a fun game with those two teams. And then Russellville will be traveling to Mars Hill as well on Friday. Big-time matchup here, 3A Mars Hill, and then you got Russellville in 5A. This is a chance, Mars Hill, they dominated Coleman earlier this year. Now you got a chance to really make a lot of noise again here with a win over Russellville.
Oh, yeah. Mars Hill, they have won, 5 state championships in a row. They've won, between 2018 and last year. They won 2 in 1A, they've won 2 in 2A, and they've won 1 in 3A, and very well could be going for 6 in a row. Everybody talks about Thompson Street, winning 7A, but Mars Hill said, hey guys, we've won 5 in a row, and we're headed towards 6. They come out and beat 6A Coleman to start the season, a team they lost to the year before, 13-10, and they come out and just kind of steamroll these guys to open the season, 55-21, and then they go and beat Brooks 49-31, Colbert Heights 54-0, Clement 61-3, and Elkmont 76-0. These guys outscored their opponents 295-55. Coach Higgins, man, he does a great job, year in and year out, and I don't think a lot of times they don't get the credit that they deserve because they're a very good program. And then you look on the flip side, you got Russellville, very good program year in and year out. They're always in the mix, in 5A. Can't tell you the last time I've, seen where Russellville was not mentioned as a title contender in 5A. They come out, start the season, beat 7A Grissom 35-12, Dexter 35-13, Lawrence County 37-7, West Point 48-14, and East Limestone 53-7. But like I said, Russellville's one of those programs that's always good year in and year out. They have won all time in 101 seasons, 663 games, for a 65% win percentage.
Pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, really impressive.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a matchup I think a lot of people that I don't think it's getting the hype around the state that it should, but it should be a fun matchup Friday night.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back with our final 3 games to break down right here on our Brad Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week. So stay tuned for more right here with Average Joe Sports Talk. Back here with our last 3 Watkins Heating and Cooling games of the week.
Technical difficulties were great.
Yeah, had a little bit of technical difficulty, so we had to get those fixed off. But, you know, we went over Pisgah at Sylvania and Russellville at Mars Hill. And, look, we've seen some comments from some of you people watching. If there's games that you wanted us to break down, you can go back and watch it. You can't do it while it's live on Facebook, but on our YouTube page as well. You can go look up Average Joe's on YouTube, find our page there. We're live on there as well. So you can go back and, you know, listen to our breakdown of any of these games that you're kind of wanting to hear about and, you know, any of the things that you're wanting to see. We talked about a lot of games earlier in the show as well. Right here is our kind of 5 biggest games that we feel are the 5 biggest games of the week. And they're presented to you by Watkins Heating and Cooling. Brad Watkins up there in Northeast Alabama. Look right there at the top left of your screen. You'll see his phone number. If you're up here in Northeast Alabama, you need to make sure your HVAC unit is working and ready to go, and he's the guy to do it. So we appreciate him. We talked about Pisgah at Sylvania, just talked about Russellville at Mars Hill, and now really, really big matchup here, Reggie. Oxford at Hartselle on Friday night, a huge non-region game.
Yes, sir. I do want to make a correction on Mars Hill. They've won 5 region championships over the last 5 years. So that was a mistake on my part.
They have won some state championships in there too.
Yeah, yeah, they have. They won 2. So yeah, that was my mix-up. So, but this game, Oxford and Hartselle, you guys talked about this earlier. I think Bo tried to steal my spotlight on this. But you know, this is a huge matchup, like Bo said earlier. We're going to see what Oxford's made of this year. You know, they're undefeated. Things are rolling really well with Sam Adams. You know, when he first took that Oxford job, you know, they had some issues. You know, he had a lot of guys transfer out, and you know, he came in, rolled up his sleeves, got to work. You know, the team got to work, community got to work, and they've got some great things going on at Oxford. And man, this year they look like the old Oxford. You know, what people know. You know, yeah. They start out beat McAdory to start the season 33-23, 7-8 Huntsville, 35-6, Shades Valley 42-3. Huffman 52-0, and then last week they had that huge win over Pinson Valley 40-6. So like I said, kudos to Sam Adams, man. I mean, he's a great guy, and he's doing a lot of great things at Oxford. And Hartselle, you know, as Bo said earlier, you know, they beat 7A Austin 28-17, Jackson Owing 35-8, Coleman 42-0, Columbia 44-0, and a very competitive game against Gadsden City last week. And you look at the Hartselle schedule, the back end of their schedule seems to be a little bit more difficult. You know, they've got Muscle Shoals. Athens is having a really good year, and they've got Decatur to finish out their region schedule. So, you know, they've kind of cruised a little bit. And so, like I said, the back end of their schedule was pretty tough. And this is the game Hartselle won 69-21 last year, and I'm sure Oxford's going to want to come in and try to get a little.
And it was a lot closer until they pulled away.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah. It was a very close game.
I think it was like 24-21 at one point.
Yeah, it was. So I'm sure that game last year is kind of sitting in Oxford's mind, like, hey, these guys put 69 points on us last year. So very interesting game. And one thing to note, Hartselle's starting quarterback, was hurt last week in the Gadsden City game, but their backup came in and kind of kept the team rolling to that win against Gadsden City last week. So pretty interesting matchup.
Yeah, and credit to the backup for coming in and helping them be able to beat Gadsden City. So that's a big win.
Oh, yeah.
This one's a fun one. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, kind of using it as an example of lower classifications taking on higher classifications. Ramsey will be hosting Auburn High School Friday night, Legion Field in Birmingham. Should be a very fun matchup here, and it is one that it's a winnable game for Ramsey. It
is. You know, Auburn's good. You know, Coach Etheridge is doing a great job down there with those guys. They're very competitive, and they lost that game to Enterprise by 1 early in the season. But this is a game. Auburn is still one of the 7A teams in the South that could compete and play for the state championship this year. You know, they started the year off with that huge win over Hoover, 39-14, and lost that 1-point game to Enterprise. That really could have went either way. And then they beat Dothan in 2 overtimes, 28-27. And they beat Jag, which, like you said, was used to be Jeff Davis in Montgomery, 46-0, and Percy Julian, which used to be Robert E. Lee, 48-13. You know, for me, it's kind of hard, you know, referring to Jag, you know, Jeff Davis, Jag, and Robert E. Lee as Percy Julian. But that's what it is. And like you said, this is a winnable game for Ramsey. You know, they came out, start the season with a win against Hueytown. And then they had that very close loss to Parker, which it's not a bad loss. You know, they
it's a
lost
good
by
loss,
3.
especially by 3.
Yeah, I mean, to a very good Parker team that could compete for 6A North. Then they, you know, get their thing, get their minds right, and then they go beat Jasper 65-6 and beat Pleasant Grove 49-17, which that score was kind of a shock.
Yeah.
You know, was not expecting that, and then they beat Fairfield 28-15 last week. So this is a very dangerous and a hungry Ramsey team. You know, in their minds, you know, they've got to be thinking, hey, we've got 7A Auburn coming in here, you know, coached by Keith Etridge, which is a great coach. You know, they're coming to the Legion Field, they're coming to our home field. You know, we got a chance to turn some heads around the state and get some momentum going into the last half of their season and try to make another run for the 5A title. So this is another game I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this week.
Oh, no doubt. And then our game of the week here, our Watkins Heating and Cooling game of the week, is a huge one that will be taking place at Clay Chalkville on Friday night. Thompson, your defending 7A state champs, head down to Clay Chalkville, who won the state championship in 2021. This was a tight game last year that Thompson won 17-14 at home. And I think now you got a Clay Chalkville team who seems to be a little bit better offensively this year than they were last year. It sets up for a really, really fun matchup here.
Oh, yeah.
And Thompson's figured themselves offensively out a little bit more than they did at this point last year as well with Trent Seaborn.
They definitely have. You know, this is another game I could not leave off. I think this is probably the premier game in the state, which ESPN is going to be at Clay this week. Yeah. So it's obviously the biggest game in the state, probably one of the biggest games in the nation, because you've got Thompson coming out of one of the toughest regions in the nation, and then you've got Clay Chalkville that's just got star power all over the field. So ESPN came in and said, nope, we're taking this game, you know, and I don't blame them. You know, Clay, you know, came out, like you said, they figured themselves out offensively. They moved Jalen Mbakwe, I think that's how you say his name. They moved him to quarterback, and that seems to be working for them. You know, they came out to start the season with a 31-0 win over Briarwood, and then they played Hueytown and won that game 17-3. And they seemed like they found their groove in the Pale City game. They won that game 46-7. Pinson Valley 41-0, and they played a very good Center Point team last week and beat them 39-14. And you know, Thompson, you know, coached by Mark Freeman, you know, they're going to be good year in and year out. They're going to have players all over the field, and they're going to play smart ball. You know, Mark Freeman has won championships from the AHSAA level. Yeah. Now he's winning championships in the AHSAA.
The highest level.
The highest level, yeah. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. You know, when he took over at Thompson, they were the homecoming opponent for a lot of teams for several years, you know. And that's no knock on Thompson, but he came in, I think in year one, he won 5 games, you know. And the year before, I think they won 1 or they went winless. So, you know, he slowly built Thompson into a powerhouse, you know. And this is definitely going to be a fun game. You know, they started the year out with a win over Opelika in the Champions Challenge, 44-13. Beat a very good Vestavia Hills team, 21-3, and that game was really a lot closer than what the score is. And then they beat Spain Park 55-14, and then Chelsea 45-0. So it seems like, you know, offensively they're you know, gaining some steam, and this could be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, so, and one of the things that affected them against Vestavia is they were supposed to play IMG the week before and had a bye week. So that may have thrown off some of that offensive momentum a little bit as well.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be a fun one there. And make sure to watch that game on ESPN. If you can't watch it live, I suggest recording it. I mean, if you love high school football and you love keeping up with prospects, athletes, things like that, you've got the #1 athlete in the state, Jalen Mbakwe, and you've got what could be the best quarterback in the state, whether it's in high school, college, whatever, and Trent Seaborn playing there for Thompson. So, he might go walk on the field and start for Alabama and Auburn right now. So, should be a fun matchup there. It should be a lot of fun games. It's 39 games that we broke down here tonight, and a lot of fun, you know, sitting here talking about all these teams, talking about all these games, and getting you set up each week for some fun Thursday and Friday night. So, again, I'll be doing the Anniston and Piedmont game Thursday night, AHSAA TV game of the week to kind of get things started, and then a lot of non-region matchups there on Friday night that should be a lot of fun and should tell us a lot about a lot of these teams that we've talked about here tonight. So, like I said earlier, if there's some teams that you wanted to hear us talk about that you didn't while you tuned in live tonight, come back later. I mean, probably in about 30 minutes, it'll be embedded up on our Facebook page. You can watch it there. You can go find our YouTube page if you hadn't Subscribe to our YouTube page. Please make sure to go follow us and subscribe on our YouTube page as well. You can find it there. And you can go back and listen to all the different games that we broke down here tonight. So for Bo Starkey and Reggie Davis, I'm Caleb Brooks. We'll see you again next week for Week 6 of Road to the Blue Map right here with Average Joe Sports Talk.